Australia is going to give around $30 million to a range of humanitarian programs to help people, particularly women, children, the elderly and the disabled, as we're seeing so many internally displaced people within Ukraine and those fleeing across the border. So that's money that will go to non-government organisations, the UN Population Fund, the World Food Programme, organisations like that. Now, on the military side, the federal government is offering $21 million worth of additional defence support for the Ukrainian armed forces. So this is likely to be things like armour, ammunition, the likes of direct military aid that has previously had provided some support from Australia, but this is an additional $21 million worth. Now, interestingly, another form of support that Australia is providing Ukraine is thermal coal. Australia is donating 70,000 tonnes of thermal coal. It's also paying for it to be shipped to Poland, and this is to try and help keep the electricity grid running in Ukraine, given its dependence on coal-fired power stations. So there'll be a shipment that will make it to Ukraine by around May, according to the Prime Minister's estimations. That was a direct request from Ukraine. And the other move that the federal government has made overnight is to ban the export of alumina and aluminium ores to Russia. Now, these are products like bauxite that Australia exports a lot of, and in fact, Russia relies on Australian exports of these products for around 20% of its alumina needs. So the federal government there moving overnight to try and prevent a shipment that was due to take place in the next week or so of aluminium to Russia, concerned that that might help in manufacturing of all sorts of industrial products, including potentially material and military products here. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says it's something they were watching closely and says it's also a bit of a warning to others who might be looking for ways to support Russia, that the government is watching to see what it can put in place with things like this export ban.
Late last week, it came to our attention that there was a ship that was due to dock in Australia this week to collect a load of alumina bound for Russia. That boat is not going to Russia with our alumina.
Also, Mel, what about this announcement of temporary protection visas? How many people will that help?
It's a good question. It's not entirely clear. We know the scale of the refugee crisis that's being created is enormous, given how many millions of displaced people there are now. But so far, many of the Ukrainians fleeing their homeland are remaining in Europe. Around 5,000 have applied for visas and received visas for Australia, and they're in a range of categories. They might have applied for a skilled migrant visa or a family reunion visa or even a student or tourist visa. The federal government's announcement today is that when those Ukrainians arrive in Australia on whatever visa they already have, once they get here, they can then apply and be processed for a temporary humanitarian visa. And that would give them a lot more certainty. If they're only able to get here on a tourist visa, it might be for a very limited time with no support in place. Whereas being able to transition to this temporary humanitarian visa will mean that they can find work, they can legally be employed, they can study, and crucially that they can access Medicare as well. So at the moment, there's only around 750 people who've arrived from Ukraine with a new visa since the outbreak of the conflict. The federal government says it's open to seeing what sort of demand there is from this program. So there's no cap in place, but at the moment it's a very specific program targeted at those who have managed to acquire another sort of visa, and it's something they can transition to upon arrival in Australia.